Our thoughts, our actions, and the realm of our control. Hey, this is Moni saying, I created this channel to help you raise your children, your students, up for success in this ever transforming world. You watch these videos because you know that there is something more inside these kids. They've got the Steve Jobs type of talent hidden inside them. So today, let's progress forward with raising resilient creators by learning more about the realm of our control. So, first of all, I'm going to start off with a special message for all the lovely mothers and grandmothers out there. It's Mother's Day today. A very happy Mother's Day to all of you. Mother's Day is a day of reflection for me. I think back to my lovely mother, and there's always something as I reflect back about some of the learnings. And today's message is derived from something that I learned several years back. So, my mother is was a very strong person. Um, she got herself educated in getting her bachelor's degree during the times when women hardly completed schooling, and she was a homemaker. And as she raised me and my other siblings, one of the key things I always remembered about her was, hey, Moni, I know you are a girl. There are lots of things people around you will tell you that, hey, there are certain things that girls can do and certain things that girls cannot do. Don't be limited by those. Know that you have the capacity, believe in yourself, and you can do what you want to do. And that's the way I was raised. And yes, going through whatever journeys I have had, the tough times, the adversities, that message always resonated. That yes, I believe I can do it, and I'll figure out a way to make things happen. Now, after let's fast forward several years. So that's the way I was raised. I was raised as a child. Fast forwarding to some of the last couple of years that my mom was here in this world with us, and I had moved to a new home, and she was living in India. I'm here in the USA, and I really wanted her to come visit me, look at this new world that I had created, my new home, and kind of just be with us for some time, just visit us. And during those days, my mom was not keeping very good health, and she was very apprehensive of any kind of long travel. And she would always say, no, I can't travel because of this, because of this. So there'll be all these reasons that she'd have. And then I would come back and say, oh, but we can handle this problem by doing this. So I would always come back with some solutions to all those problems that she had stated. So initially she would state some problems, and I would come back and say, oh, but we can handle it that way, trying to resolve that problem. But then her thing was still, oh no, I can't travel. And then as the days progressed, it became just a no. Every time I'll say, okay, mama, let's come travel, mommy, let's come here. And she'd just say no. And it was a hard, like complete stonewall no. And that's it. Um, it was very hard for me. I could not understand this. And many times I would feel like, what happened? What's going on with my mother? This learning dawned upon me during that agonizing air flight. So I was actually flying. It was about 14 hours long flight from USA to India. So I could join my mother in her last journey. And that's when I was thinking. I was thinking about these two extremes, right? There was this side of my mother as I was being raised about, hey, you can believe in yourself, you can do what you want to do, that can do approach. And then the second side here was, no, I can't do everything. I really tried hard. I did my best to try and have my mom come and visit me, but I couldn't make that happen. And I was trying to reconcile this, like, okay, what was it that my mother was trying to teach me even during those last few days? And Here's what happens for many of us, and I have found myself in the situation as well, is that we look at situations, and of course there are some situations which are going to be under our control and some which are completely outside of our control. So many a times situations around us can change. They can change to something totally undesired. You could you may lose a job, or you may have some adversities, maybe some very negative feedback from people around you. Maybe you are getting some verbal abuse or some other kinds of bad behavior around you from people. There could be circumstances where the whole environment has changed. The community where you live is evolved, has changed, become totally different. Political changes happen. Sometimes they impact, the economy and what's happening surrounding us. The stock market may plummet, which impacts our finances if you are invested in that market. So there are lots of these things that can happen beyond some of. So just to add to that listing, there are also some things where a negative feedback, and these days we are so much on social media, right? And you could be out there and somebody comes and puts a very negative post or an email about you, and those things then linger, right? If you think back to a couple of decades ago, if you had a bad interaction with some person, it was oftentimes limited in time, in scope, and the and in terms of how many people actually could see it. So it was an interaction between two people more than likely. And oftentimes, as days passed, forgiven, forgotten, and you guys moved on, right? But in today's world where you have many of this information kind of sits in a digital platform somewhere. So if you had a bad interaction, it's there, it lingers over time, it's there. People can look back and still see what happened, whatever happened several years ago. It's there for anybody to see, really, because it's very public information. And that creates, think about the kind of uh, environment it creates for young children. Oftentimes, as adults, we have a hard time dealing with that kind of negativity. Now, think about little children, and they are so much exposed to this kind of constant barrage of information coming at them, and sometimes even about them. So it becomes really even harder for those little kids. So again, talking about all these adversities that can happen, they can come in terms of changing situations, changing environments, or even like just people around you, people you interact with, your friends, your relatives, and they are giving you either some feedback that you don't appreciate, or something that any kind of encounter that just didn't go the way you would like it to be. So there are all these things that can happen now, and they impact you. And oftentimes we spend a lot of time fretting, thinking about those situations and, oh, what to do? How do I tackle this? And there's so much, and why did this person say this to me? Or why did this happen? Why am I being put into this situation again? I feel like I'm constantly, bombarded with one thing after the other. And we go into this kind of a thought process, which basically really is nothing but a spiral. It just kind of takes you downhill. There is really no escaping from it unless you can very quickly think and realize that there are lots of those things which are really not under your control. And that's the most important realization, is think of like two spheres, right? Two circles. And here are the things that you control, and here are the things that you don't control. Oftentimes, the things where you spend a lot of time thinking about, fretting about, agonizing about, are things which are in this sphere, things that you don't control. Somebody said something bad to you, you don't control that. Somebody was behaving badly with you, you don't control that. The stock market crashed, you don't control that. So again, there are lots of those things which actually fall into that bucket. So what is it that you do control? And as I've thought a lot about these things, they're really, at the end of the day, there are only two things that you control. It's your thoughts and your actions. Your thoughts, your actions. Those are the only two things that we control. In any situation, in any circumstances, actions and thoughts. Those are the only two things. Now, let me explain a little bit more. What typically happens is that, of course, you can take control of what you want to do with yourself and decide to take certain actions surrounding that. In many situations, when you realize that the situation is completely outside of your control, in that case, you control your thought. How you think about that situation is what you can change to cope up with those situations which are making it harder for you, but you know that they're outside of your control. So your thoughts and actions. I'm going to take some examples just to so going back to the example I began with my own story and with my mother, right? So the situation where I really wanted her to come visit me, but the fact that she did not or she could not travel was totally outside of my control. And so no matter how much fretting I did, how much efforts I put into this, there were things that I just could not control. I did give it a lot of effort, but at some point I'm realizing that that's not under my control. And so what's the next thing I can do is really change my thinking. I know that my mom loves me. I know that I love her quite a bit, but because of certain, whatever reasons, she is unable to travel, and I accept that. And I can just take that thought, so I don't have to keep agonizing about this thing which is not under my control. Same thing. So now if you think about all the situations that happen around us, and number one, just take an inventory of all these things that you worry about, that you are get anxious about, that you stress about. Oh, my child is not listening to me, or I uh, you know my boss doesn't listen to me. Whatever those things could be, put them in a list of, like, just dump them out there, and then start saying, do I control this? What do I control in here? You will find oftentimes most of the things that we are worrying about, stressing about, are not within our control. If somebody said something bad to you, it's not a reflection about you. It's a reflection about them, their state of mind, what they are thinking, where they are, their situation, their circumstances. Maybe they are in such a tough situation right now that they don't have control on what they're saying. It's not a reflection about you. And oftentimes we take it as if somebody said something bad because I am bad, or I did something wrong. And it's good to think about, is there something that I need to change my action? Is there something that I need to do differently? And that's a great thing to do. So you can only control your own actions, your own thoughts. So make the inventory of all the things that you're stressing about. Start marking them. What is it that you control? What is it that you do not control? Okay, so you've separated them out, put them in their respective circles. The things that you control. So, for example, you might be stressing about, hey, my business is suffering losses, and I don't know what to do because of, let's say, COVID. So, what are some things that I can do? What are within my control? I know that the environment, the market has changed. There's other certain things that I can do to still keep, going forward. So you take those actions, but then there are certain things that you feel like, some things have changed, and maybe I just need to evolve my thinking and go in a different direction, and so on and so forth. My kids are not listening to me. I hear this a lot, and especially we're talking about this on a Mother's Day. Especially if you have a preteen or a teenager, I think you know what I mean. There are often times that you would want your child to do certain things. Again, these little individuals, they are little, but doesn't matter how little they are still individuals. They are still their own people, and they have their own thinking, their own situations, and they want to do things a certain way. And even though we are their parents, you are their mom or their dad, and you'd like them to do behave a certain way or do things a certain way, remember that there are certain things that you control and some things that you do not control. And so the child is not listening to you. I think then again, the next thing comes down to is changing your thoughts about, okay, what could be possibly going on with the child that might be creating this kind of a situation. Are there certain things about the environment of that child that I can, change, which changes this behavior? And I'll be talking more about that as we go forward. But again, remember that there are those two elements only: your own thoughts, your own actions. So either if you don't like something about the situation you're in, act to change that situation for yourself, or number two, change your thinking about how you are taking that situation to be. And when you change that thinking, it oftentimes reduces the impact of that situation on you. So that's the big message I want to leave you with today. Your thoughts, your actions, remember that. And this is a very important lesson also, to pass along to your own children as well, because as I discussed before, the kind of always on digital society that we are living in, your children are getting bombarded by a lot of things, information, and feedback that can trigger a lot of stress and anxiety for them. And having them also be able to discern, what are the things under my control, what are under not under my control at an early age, will be a very helpful skill set for them as they go forward, as they grow, and as they move towards their own success in their own lives, knowing that there are elements always in our life that are not going to be within our control, and some that are going to be within our control.